What's cracking, people? It's your man, Cousin T, aka the Alpha Wingman, representing high-level technicians operating globally and beyond. So listen, every now and again we have to circle back and take a moment to observe the why of our mission, right? We have to reflect on what we've produced in terms of value adds to this space. And today I wanted to cover a lot of the reasoning behind why uh, men who speak about game, the dating, mating, and relationship space within the broader sphere, is essential to any progressive conversation about masculinity, leadership, femininity, and what it means to be human all together. See, at the end of the day, we may be presenting a facet of the greater prism of the human experience, but make no mistake, our contribution to the conversation is integral, because at the end of the day, in the beginning of the next, human sexuality is what drives the human dynamic across timelines. There would be no human progression without the intimate space, without procreative relations. And so, unpacking what that means for us culturally, what that means for us socially, and what that means for us as men who are um, on a journey of understanding, is that owning who we are as sexual beings is as important as owning who we are as spiritual beings, and is as important as owning who we are as intellectual beings. And that's even before we get to the ever present onslaught of external marketing that is in this modern world, uh, attempting to encroach upon masculinity, leadership, stoicism, the ability to own and hone the heteronormative. And so when we have discussions about, for example, the baseline masculine erotic performance arc, meaning how you even approach the intimate space, what is your performance within that dynamic? How do you relate to your feminine counterpart? How do you search out the feminine virtue and value in a prospective partner? All of these are essential elements that we attempt to synthesize on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly basis in these spaces. More so, obviously, in detail and in depth on the Patreon side because of certain censorship, but as much as we can in public spaces, we are, as men, going to have this conversation to the benefit and progression of not only our uh, personal development, but the development and progression as a collective. And the more that we have these conversations, the more that we ask the essential questions, the more that we unpack certain cultural narratives so that we can present our own counter narratives, the more that we unpack the externally imposed realities that attempt to co-opt our natural biological imperatives, we get to decide and own our position within this greater conversation. And not only that, we get to inspire others who may not have the vocabulary, who may not have the impetus to create spaces to have these dialogues so that they can then be empowered and given information that they can use to reflect internally what this conversation means to them. Ultimately, gentlemen, the purpose of these spaces and these conversations are so that you can reflect on your own development and then compare that to the greater cultural narrative, so that the progression of the culture is paramount. At the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to get down to. How do we individually contribute to the cultural progression collectively? That is what hopefully the goal and the purpose of these conversations and these exercises, and the research, the historical context, our experiential, relaying of anecdotal happenings will ultimately achieve. I think that's a reasonable request or a reasonable desire in terms of results and impact from spaces like these, and ultimately the conversations that we have. Plus, we want to have an enjoyment, right? We want to be able to enjoy the journey. We want to be able to enjoy, the fullness and the robust expressions of our humanity. That's another dynamic within this greater conversation. We want to be able to understand who we are, how we function, what is the primal sort of component of our intellectual pursuit, right? We want to be able to match up what we experience, what we perceive, what we think will happen as we engage our female counterparts in this, timeless dance of erotic intimacy. What are the values of this exchange? What are the components of this exchange? What do we have to bring as a form of our own personal creative expression within intimate spaces? And how does the reaction and response from our female counterpart impact or inspire our perception? And so ultimately, like I said, gentlemen, this is just another facet of how we view ourselves, either ourselves locally or our higher selves, or however you'd like to reflect, esoterically or just philosophically on the experience that we're having. That, to a greater extent, is the purpose of these spaces and the end goal, part of the end goal of the greater conversation, in my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. What did I miss? What should be added? What do you think, in your opinion, has been the positive, negatives, or just neutral elements within this ongoing conversation that we will not stop having? There's no force, okay, that is capable of muting this particular conversation, especially since it's such an essential and primal and necessary conversation to have as we continue to evolve, as we continue to progress as a human family, but also as a cultural collective. This conversation must continue. So, as always, this is your man, Cousin T, aka the Alpha Wingman, saying stay sharp and mission focused. Later.